Oh, we are so bad.
Oh man, it feels so good to hear that drop again.
We are so bad.
How we doing this good morning?
Hey man, I'm up, birds singing, kids healthy. The rest is the rest. How's it going over there, bro?
It's going. It's going. It's been a week, but but
I
look,
get that,
man.
man. We all have them, bro. We all have them.
Like you said, healthy, breathing, kids healthy. I can't complain too much. We gotta keep it pushing.
Facts. The rest is the rest.
But the Cowboys ain't healthy, big dog. That's one thing I know. That's one thing I do know for
Nah,
sure.
they not. I kind of set you up for that one too. Good take. Good take. Good
Listen,
take.
fam.
That was Dwayne to LeBron.
Yeah, I caught the alley. I caught the alley.
Yeah, Dwayne to LeBron. Yeah, nah, they're wrecked. They're wrecked physically, man, and they have been for a few weeks. But every week, every additional week they play football, they come up with another round of injuries that just continues to twist the knife. And obviously, they lose Marquise Bell this week, or I should say in the most recent game, with a shoulder injury that requires surgery to repair. So that's going to end his season, and that sucks on so many levels because this is a former undrafted guy who is in a contract year. He'll be restricted free agent next year. But the money aside, this is one of the guys who he's been a dog for you. Like, he's done everything that you've asked him to do ever since he stepped foot into this facility. And you're 3-6, and he's still out there giving it his all, laying it all on the line, putting it all on the field, and he pays for it, which, football is going to football. But bad things happen to good people sometimes, and this is one of those cases. So Marquise Bell, he's done for the season. And then you look at the injury report, and it's a mix of good and bad news, and depending on how you want to look at it. So,
Right.
Good news being Deron Bland has had his second full participation in practice. And I know people are asking me, well, no C, does that mean he'll be back this week? I still say put a pin in that simply because 4 or 5 weeks ago he had 2 full participations on a Wednesday and Thursday going into the Lions matchup, and then on Friday they shut him down, and he was shut down ever since. So let's see if he makes it through today, Friday, and then the walkthrough on Saturday. But he is trending toward making his 2024 return, or I should say debut, because he's not taking a snap in 24 quite yet. Trayvon Diggs, good news. He missed on Wednesday, but he was back at practice on Thursday. He's dealing with a groin and a knee issue, 2 separate things, not even attached to each other. It's just how the season's going. CeeDee Lamb, here's some more bad news. He was downgraded from limited on Wednesday to did not participate on Thursday. He's dealing with a back and a foot issue, and keep in mind it's not that shoulder is completely healed either. Quite yet. So wide receiver 1, he's banged up. There doesn't appear to be any concern, though, as far as him playing on Sunday. But even if he does take the field, which is expected that he will, he is far from 100%. And then back to a little bit of good news. Hunter Lipke, he's back on the limited capacity, so he was upgraded. And now we'll finish off with the bad news. See how this goes? This is how the season's been going. Neither Zach Martin nor Tyler Smith have practiced this week.
Ooh.
They are both dealing with multiple injuries. Tyler Smith has an ankle and a knee, and Zach Martin has his shoulder and both of his ankles that he's up against. I'm hard-pressed to see Zach Martin on the field on Sunday. If he does, it's because he's Zach Martin and he's trying to go out on his shield, which I can respect. But Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, and then Tyler Guyton, he's not expected to miss because he's been a full participant both times this week, but he's banged up. So you have 3 starting offensive linemen who are banged up, 2 who are in question right now for Sunday, and you're going up against Dan Quinn and a defense that features Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, and guys who are going to be out for blood. Oh, by the way, that Payne guy, he's in there as well.
Brother,
so,
you could have just said going up against Dan Quinn. You don't think Dan Quinn heard the noise after that Green Bay game?
And Joe Witt.
And
Joe Witt.
I know Joe heard it.
Oh, yeah. And if you know anything about Joe,
right,
silent killer,
right,
he's not going to say much of anything, but clip is loaded. Loaded.
Well, let's.
Happy holidays.
It's a lot. As you were talking about all that, I was thinking in my head, I think the Cowboys have suffered some significant type of injury. Now, granted, CeeDee Lamb has played in all the games, from every single top guy. Dak, Lamb, Zach, Tyler, Trayvon, Duran. Like you would argue those are kind of your and Zach Martin. Those are your core dudes. And they've I forgot about DeMarcus, Micah Parsons. Like every core guy, Jake Ferguson has suffered. Brandon Cooks have suffered some type of injury that have kept them out of games or in Lamb's regard practice. That's wild.
Yeah, that's the season. And what makes it worse, what compounds it is I feel like the season, the omen for how the season would go was Sam Williams going down with that torn ACL. I think that in the moment we were looking at it as, oh man, this is tragic. But at least Cowboys have Marshawn Nealon. We didn't even mention Marshawn Nealon.
Another young buck.
But you figure, okay, well you got Marshawn Nealon, you got Tank, you got Micah. They'll be all right. And then people just started dropping like flies. This is one of the most injury-ravaged seasons I've ever seen from the Cowboys. But it's not the reason. It's not the reason that they are 3-7 right now. It's one of the reasons. But they were playing bad football before they started getting ravaged by injuries. So it's a perfect storm of just unfortunate events. Right. So if anyone has if you're in my generation and you know of the movie Lemony Snicket's and a series of unfortunate events, that's what 2024 is. A series of unfortunate events. Call it Lemony Snicket.
What a comparison. Quickly, just to go back on some of the good news, because I have a few things I'm watching for. One of them was the returns of the guys like Cooks, Nealon, DeRon Bland. If you can kind of just give me your opinion on what you're looking for in regards to each one of those guys potentially returning this week.
Yeah, like I said, Bland, he is on the right trajectory. I just put my personal opinion is to put a pin in that for the same reason I did when Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones were bearish about what was going on with him going into the Detroit game. They basically jumped out. Right. Stephen jumped out and said, oh, yeah, he'll be back. But the whole time Mike McCarthy was slow playing it and saying, hey, man, we got to see him in practice. And I was saying that myself outside of McCarthy. I said, hey, the guy hasn't practiced since August, hasn't played a game since January. I don't see him getting 2 or 3 practices in and then playing. So now transfer that to this week. I still don't know that he goes. There's a solid chance, but then you also got to consider, same for Brandon Cooks, Marshawn Nealon, got to consider they have a game 4 days after this game that's coming up. So how does that factor into the decision-making process? Because ideally, you don't want to put them on the field on Sunday and then shut them down on Thursday. That means they've had a setback, right? So it'll be interesting to see how the Cowboys play it. But Ron Bland, he has a solid chance. Brandon Cooks has a good chance. Marshawn Nealon has a good chance. If one of those two guys, if both of those guys come over to the active roster, Cowboys got to make 2 seats. Marquise Bell is going to be 1 seat when they move him to IR. Question will be, if you move both Marshawn and Brandon over to the roster, what's the other seat? Who's the other seat? Who's the sacrificial lamb that gets that cut? So, yeah.
I tell you this, Pat. I'm very skeptical on DeRon Bland returning. I don't know how I feel about that because foot injuries. We've seen. I think it was Cooper. He played with the foot thing for years here. Dez, I'd argue in 2015 when he tried to gut through that foot injury, that I think that affected him and maybe cost him a couple years. And he even comes out and talks about it. And so I just man, I don't want Bland to come back and re-aggravate that thing. And then he goes into a contract year. I think we talked about this last week. I would me personally would just sit him, let him heal because he's too important for possibly your future. If he comes out, damages that, and now you're going into the contract year next year, now you're up in the air on potentially re-signing him if he's not the same guy.
I couldn't have said it better, Steele. You said it exactly how I've been saying it. And I talked to DeRon yesterday. He spoke with the media yesterday, and I've been talking to him at several points before, he stepped in front of the camera, just checking on his mental, checking on his physical. And as far as the mental aspect, every single time that I've spoken to him and kind of a sidebar in passing, he's been in great spirits, but he wants to play football. And I respect that. He's a competitor. He wants to play ball. Been there. I know, man, we for those of us that have played team sports and we are true competitors, yeah, man, you want to get out there. You don't care about the record. You don't care about none of that. You just want to play ball. I understand. But on the flip side of this, you're 3-7. You've already missed 10 games. You haven't played a game since early January. And what's the risk versus the reward, right? So if you play this season, assuming everything goes well for you and there's no setback physically, fantastic. But what did you gain? Because you're not in the playoffs. So what did you gain, right? And you're not a rookie. You're not a second-year guy, so it's not that you, quote-unquote, need the reps. See, this is where I differ on Marshawn Nealon. I would bring Marshawn Nealon back because he's a rookie. He needs the reps, right? So you get him those reps, and that should only make him better for year two. It's a different situation with DaRon Bland. I personally say, shut DaRon Bland down. Too valuable. You don't want any setback, like you said, that could also affect the start of his offseason program, potentially affect the start of his training camp going into that pivotal year next season. It's just too important when it comes to him. Marshawn, he needs the reps. Brandon Cooks, he's a free agent next year. So, yeah, bring him back and see what he can give you offensively and mix with, like, Mango. You got to see what you get with Mango. You give a fourth-round pick for him. Maybe, more targets to Flo, to Ryan Flanoy, kind of mix that up. But when it comes to DaRon, I'm personally, I understand that he's a competitor and he wants to play. But if I'm GMing this thing, I'm shutting him down.
I'm with you, man. We got Patrick No-C Walker of DallasCowboys.com with us. Pat, you often bring the human element to the viewers, the fans, and we really appreciate that. And you're in the locker room, and I've been curious over this losing streak. Like, what is the vibe like? I used to ask you that almost every week because, when it was winning seasons, it was a bit different. But the Cowboys are losing right now, and these are still grown men that got to do jobs and that have pride and that want to win. But it's bad, and I just sometimes wonder if that will affect that locker room in a negative way, where maybe players start wanting change somewhere, whether that be coaches or the backup quarterback situation, or other guys wanting to get in. And I wonder just how much that camaraderie and brotherhood is staying together. What's the locker room like right now?
Well, I will say there's been no fractures within the locker room.
Okay.
They're not eating each other alive. There's no, proverbial cannibalism going on inside the locker room. The solidarity is still there. No matter who you talk to on any level, it could be CeeDee Lamb all the way down to a Josh Butler and everyone in between. Everybody is in lockstep. Brevin Spanford and Luke Schoonmaker and Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert and Jalen Brooks. I mean, Jalen Brooks was just made inactive, and he's still a part of that solidarity. I talked to him yesterday, and he's just like, hey, man, I just got to earn my way back onto the field. See, he's taking the accountability. Each one of these guys are taking personal accountability. They're not pointing fingers at the guy next to them in the locker room. They're not saying, in the inverse, they're not saying, well, I'm playing well. Why is this guy getting more reps? A guy like Hunter Lipke could probably make that argument. Deuce Vaughn could probably make that argument, but they're not. Instead, they're keeping their head down and grinding forward and trying to, make a name for themselves how they can. But there are no fractures whatsoever. I will say there is a collective shock that is in the air in the locker room. No different from you're cruising down the street. You expect to get from point A to point B with no issues. That's how they entered the season. Hey, we're going to get from point A to the playoffs, and we're going to worry about the playoffs when we get there. And then what happens? One tire blows out, two tires blow out. You lose control of the car. It flips over the median into oncoming traffic. All these bad things happen, and then you're just laying there upside down in the car, and you're literally in shock. Like, what happened? And you're trying to figure out what went wrong, not realizing that everything went wrong. Every possible thing went wrong. So, I've talked to Jordan Lewis a lot, talked to some of these other guys, Damone Clark and Tyler Guyton. And Guyton is a perfect example. Like, every time he tries to get back on the field to get some reps, something goes wrong, right, as far as physically, right? So availability becomes the issue. And now you look across the line, and there are issues with Tyler Smith and Zach Martin, and the list goes on and on. So solidarity has not been broken. Everyone's still behind Mike McCarthy. He has not lost the locker room. I know people are whispering about that. I'm telling you, I'm in the locker room every other day. They have not lost. Mike McCarthy has not lost the locker room, but the locker room is in a collective state of shock, still trying to figure out what the hell went wrong in 2024. But the answer is everything.
Not a whole lot to look forward to in these coming games, but just kind of what's your gut feeling this weekend, both offensively and defensively?
Well, for those who want an entertaining matchup, they are 3-1 on the road. They typically do well at, well, it's not FedEx Field anymore. What's the name of that
Um,
trash stadium? They changed it to, no, something starts with an N. Who cares? So they fare well in the nation's capital typically. Brandon Cooks might be back to give you some kind of additional weapon for Cooper Rush. But even with Brandon Cooks, I mean, he's not on the offensive line. Your offensive line is going to go up against a defensive front that's one of the best in the league, and you're in shambles as far as health is concerned. You're not running the ball well. Cooper Rush is not throwing the ball well because the outfit doesn't fit him like it did in 2022. Flip to the defensive side of the ball. Maybe you can have some fun with the fact that Trayvon Diggs has perennially shut down Terry McLaurin, which is something that's difficult for most cornerbacks to do. So maybe Deron Bland comes back and Jordan Lewis is expected to be back. So maybe for the first time ever as starters, you get to see your trio of cornerbacks. That would be exciting. What does that mean for against a Commanders offense that can run the ball real well? With Brian Robinson back, he's healthy. Austin Eckler is one of the leading receivers on the team, and he's a running back. So Cowboys got their hands full. Anything can happen, though. I mean, the Browns just beat the Steelers, and the Cowboys beat the Browns and the Steelers. So, I mean, who knows? It's football. Anything can happen. It might be a fun day in that capacity, but if you're looking for them to secure a higher draft pick, then that's not going to be fun for you. So it really just depends on what lens you're watching this game through. Yeah, it just really depends on your perspective. But I do expect them to be a little bit more competitive because it is on the road and something is just poison at home for some reason. I don't know what that is, what that toxin is. But I don't expect them to take this win, though. There's just too much working against them, in addition to the Dan Quinn variable and the Dorrance Armstrong variable, the Dante Fowler variable, so forth and so on. Just don't let it be the Noah Brown legacy game, please. That's all I'm asking.
Oh, my God. I forgot about Noah Brown, too. That's a good point. It's a whole lot over there, former Cowboys. But again, like I said at the top of this whole thing, if you don't think Dan Quinn and Joe Witt don't want to lay it on you, well, he got another thing coming. So they better match that energy. Appreciate you, Pat.
Yes, sir. Talk to y'all soon.
That's our guy, Patrick No C. Walker. This week's version of the scientific method.